They say one man's trash is another man's treasure, and maybe this is the case more than you would think for Americans in Germany, where some things considered normal to Germans are considered luxury to Americans. Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany with our baby, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. There are some things that are stereotypically different between the US and Europe that Americans perceive as being luxurious over here in Europe. Now, maybe when you are comparing wearing your pajamas to the grocery store and actually getting dressed, we are setting the bar pretty low for what is considered luxury. But fashion is, of course, one of these stereotypical differences between what is perceived as normal or luxurious between these two places. However, we must remember that you can't just make blanket statements about Europe, considering it's so incredibly diverse, just as is the US. For example, if you think clothes are more luxurious in Europe, when you move to Germany like we did, you might be surprised when you see this. But that doesn't mean when we moved to Germany over 4.5 years ago that there weren't still things that were normal to Germans that to us Americans felt luxurious. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today in my video. Not all that glistens is gold, but these German items are something to behold. In the US, for a very unexplainable reason, bathroom stalls are famous for not going all the way to the ground, being relatively short at the top, and for having huge cracks around the door and walls. It does its job kind of by giving one privacy when going to the restroom, but not completely. It is very easy to still see someone through the cracks, and sometimes this leads to awkward eye contact with someone sitting on the toilet as you check to see if it is available or not. In Germany, they cannot relate to this awkward feeling Americans know so well because this form of bathroom stall does not exist here. Even in the grungiest bathrooms in Germany, Americans will be impressed by the luxurious feeling of total privacy. And even if they are the cubicle styles like we are talking about in the US, they are made without cracks in them, tend to go much lower to the ground, and you are completely protected from wandering eyes inside. Wow, so luxurious. I can't see people sitting on the toilet. Luxury. But even more luxurious than this, it is also very common to enter a German bathroom and they have full rooms built to enclose every toilet for maximum privacy. Why Americans choose to live with this indecent and uncomfortable, awkward toilet construction when it is completely avoidable, as the Germans have proven, I just don't know. You want to know luxury? Take a shower in Germany. In American homes, the standard shower head is a dinky fixed shower head that allows you to only rinse from the top down, leaving some bits relatively untouched, if you catch my drift. Sometimes on vacation, we might go to a nicer place and we were blown away by a fancy shower head that could adjust the way the water would flow, and even more luxuriously, a shower head that was connected by a hose and is movable to reach all angles. Well, in Germany, from what we have found, this has just generally been the standard. I'm sure we've come across an immovable shower head, although I can't think of one, and instead, Germans seem more dedicated to being able to shoot water exactly where they want it, as opposed to being restricted to water that hopefully finds its way around. Call Americans easily impressed if you would like, but being used to dinky, cheap, stationary faucets and then finding out what many Americans upgrade to as the standard in Germany is, well, something special. The classic animated film Cars could not possibly have been written in Germany, and I'll tell you why. I'm originally from a southern state in the US called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern German state of Rheinland-Pfalz. Therefore, I like to mention that some of these things I talk about may be a little more specific to these two places. For example, one thing more specific to Oklahoma is the lack of vehicle inspections that we have. In other US states like Texas, for example, cars do have to undergo inspections for safety or emission standards. However, as I believe one symptom of not having these roadworthiness inspections in Oklahoma is that from time to time, or maybe even a lot of times, you will see vehicles driving around with questionable roadworthiness, aka junkers or beaters. With that being said, this doesn't mean you are allowed to drive a vehicle just however you want in Oklahoma. Even without formal car inspections, there are laws about car standards like not driving with certain types of cracked windshields or brake lights being out. These are just policed by, well, the police, who can pull you over if they notice an infraction. Well, okay, maybe cars could have taken place in a fictional German village, but it would have done without one of the main characters, Mater. That's because in Germany, we feel like you only see luxury cars driving around. Okay, again, maybe that's not totally true and a bit of an exaggeration. They're not all luxury cars, but you just don't see the junkers and beaters in Germany like you find in places like Oklahoma. There are two factors that I consider to be the reason behind this. One, I put a big responsibility on the TÜV inspection cars must undergo in Germany. That seems to help maintain a high quality of roadworthiness, but also two, Germans seem to take better care of their vehicles in general. Of course, you will find car enthusiasts in the US, and you will find people in Germany who don't care about cars, but in my experience, Germans just do in general care more about their cars and take better care of them. Now, this is all a personal observation, so I would be interested in knowing if this is something others who have experienced in both countries can comment on in the comments below. In other videos, I've talked about alcohol differences between the US and Germany, with one major difference being cost. I've dispelled a popular belief that beer is cheaper than water in German restaurants and explained how a big part of this is because beer is often much cheaper in Germany than in the US. One of the reasons for that is because of how some states implement what are colloquially called sin taxes, or literally higher taxes on items viewed as vices, which then drive the prices up on, say, alcohol. In fact, the US ranks among one of the most expensive places in the world to buy wine, being generally even more expensive than Switzerland, which is world famous for everything being extremely expensive there. However, Germany actually ranks as one of the least expensive countries in the world to buy wine in. Now, you might be saying, wait a second, I thought you were talking about things that feel luxurious. So if they are cheap in Germany, how can that feel luxurious? Well, we are continuously surprised about how we are able to actually feel like we can afford what would be considered luxury wines in the US, but in our German grocery stores, they are only like 10 euro. Or how, spoken by a true wine novice and not a connoisseur, by the way, we can get really good bottles of wine for just around 3 euro, whereas you would not want to touch a $3 bottle of wine in the US if you can even find one. There is one quintessential luxury item not in the US that partially owes its luxury status in the US to its elusiveness, as it is illegal in the US, and that is Cuban cigars. Now, the US is confusing, but also very black and white on this subject. In the 60s, JFK instituted a complete embargo on Cuba. Of course, not until after acquiring over 1,000 of his favorite Cuban cigars to have in reserve. Later, Obama tried to normalize relations with Cuba and allowed Americans to purchase Cuban cigars in Cuba or third countries and bring them back to the US in specific quantities. But then later, Trump took a hardline approach on Cuba once again, and today it is completely illegal to bring Cuban cigars into the US once again. So with all the back and forth, Americans often are confused on whether or not they can or cannot bring Cuban cigars into the US. But every government website you find will make it clear where they stand. In Germany, however, there is no embargo on Cuba, and therefore Cuban cigars are sold here. Now, sure, this is absolutely not a German product, nor specific to just Germany, where again, the US is basically alone in the world with the fight against Cuban cigars, but nonetheless, because of our personal life experiences, I have known many Americans who travel to Germany, realize that the US is unique in its Cuban cigar black hole, and therefore want a taste of the forbidden fruit, or in this case, leaf. We recently traveled back to the US, and it was my first time back in the US for over a year. While we were there, we went to 2 different bakeries in Oklahoma. Yes, surprise, there are bakeries that bake fresh breads, and you can find more than just toast bread in the US. But honestly, I was dumbfounded at the cost of these baked goods. For example, one baguette at one of the bakeries cost $5, or a mini baguette, which was maybe about the third of a size of a regular baguette, cost $3.50. Whereas where we live, I can pop over to France where the average price for a baguette in 2022 was just 90 cents. And boulangeries were lamenting the fact that they might have to raise the price to €1.50. Here in Germany, I can go grab a baguette from our local bakery for just around €2.50. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know everything that goes into baking and selling these products to say whether or not these prices are justified. But there seems to be a different mentality towards these goods in Europe and in the US. In Europe, these types of baked goods, whether it be a baguette or another type of local bread, are just staples of life and therefore seem to be priced as staples of life where people can afford them. However, in the US, fresh baked breads like this from bakeries are viewed as kind of luxury items and therefore sometimes priced as luxury items. Because they are handmade and artisanal, people think they should be paying high prices for these items. Again, the main difference being where French people might be buying a baguette daily or multiple times a week, a $5 baguette is just absurd. But for an American that buys a baguette for a special occasion, $5 is a reasonable price for a specialty item, I guess. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is: sandy beaches or rocky beaches? Which do you prefer? Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you in my next video. But that doesn't mean when we moved to Germany over 4.5 years ago, airplane. If you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, think about not living right next to a major airport. Well, in Germany, from what we have found, this is